Oh, hello, this is Tak Chung from Walk with Tak. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Please write me at walkwithtak@gmail.com if you have any question regarding this video or any past videos. If you have videos that you would like me to make, please let me know. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Today's video is a request from Hank, a viewer. He requests a hot and sour soup. Now, I love challenges. I enjoyed people send me requests, and a lot of time I might not have made those dishes before, but I find it interesting, and I particularly enjoy to figure out how to make those dishes in the simplest way. And in this particular case, this person asked me, he said that I have seen other recipes on hot and sour soups, but they're way too complicated. I'm looking for a simple recipe. Can you help me out with that? Of course, I'd love to do that. When I was a college student, I worked in a Chinese restaurant, and one of my jobs is to make soup of the day. And there are two soups. The first one is an egg drop soup, and the second one is a hot and sour soup. Now, I have never made hot and sour soup at home, and this is many years ago since I last made the hot and sour soup. So when I received that request, I said, well, I'm going to give that a try. There are many versions of hot and sour soup. The most common version is that the one with tofu, with some type of mushroom, most of the time with shiitake mushroom, and then with pork. And the soup is thickened and topped with egg drop, and the flavor of the soup is spicy and sour. It is probably one of the most popular soup in Chinese restaurants. To make this soup, I'm going to use whatever that I have already in my refrigerator, freezer, and pantry. The first thing that I did is that I thawed out some pork tenderloin that I have prepped in advance. They are already cut in thin slices before I freeze them. So I thawed them out and then I cut them into thin strips. And the way how I package them, just like I did with chicken, it took me only about 10 minutes to thaw them out. I'm going to show you a little trick that how to actually thaw them out faster. After you soak them in the warm water, I bend them. This will break the pieces apart, and this will reduce the thawing time. For the hot and sour soup, most of the time people use shiitake mushroom because it gives great flavor. The shiitake mushroom that I use are dehydrated, and they are very handy to have on hand because you can use them in many different types of dishes. You can buy them in many Asian grocery stores, and the nice thing is that they last forever, so you can have them on hand and they will be ready anytime you want. Now, most of the time, it will take about 5 to 6 hours to rehydrate the mushroom, and that often turns out to be an obstacle because quite often for me, I am not thinking ahead, and so when I want to use the shiitake mushroom, usually it's about maybe an hour before I start to cook, and it's too late. I discovered there's a neat trick for you to hydrate the shiitake mushroom faster. This is really a useful trick. All you have to do is that, as shown here, you notice that in the middle of the mushroom, of course, is the stem. And the stem is very hard. And all you have to do is that if you're soaking the mushroom, you pick up the mushroom and use your thumb and you press the stem. In the beginning, it will be hard to press. But after you do it a few times, once the stem has been softened, it starts to absorb water. And this water spread through the entire mushroom, and it will soften the mushroom, rehydrate the mushroom 10 times faster. When I use this little trick, the mushroom will be ready to use in about 15 to 20 minutes. As you can see here, the mushroom is now soft enough for me to slice them. So I cut them into thin strips. And you can use as many mushrooms or as few mushrooms that you would like. In this case, I use about probably maybe 10 to 15 mushrooms. The next essential ingredients that for the hot and sour soup is the tofu. And the best tofu is that it is very soft, but without breaking apart. And the candidate for this tofu for the hot and sour soup is a type of tofu known as silken tofu. It is a very soft tofu, and it has an extremely smooth texture. And this is what makes the soup great, because when you have the soup will be thickened with cornstarch. And the silken tofu definitely serves the best purpose. Now, the chicken tofu is not available in most supermarkets. However, you can find them readily in almost most Asian supermarkets. As you can see here, this tofu is very soft, almost jello-like. Okay, now we have all the basic ingredients ready to make the hot and sour soup. Okay, let's go in the kitchen and get started, and I will tell you other ingredients that you need along the way. I'm going to make this soup in my wok, and of course you will say he will definitely use a wok. If he does not use the wok on that day, there must be something wrong with him. Instead of cooking it in my Cucina 14-inch stainless steel wok, I'm going to cook this soup in my cast iron wok, which is a 13-inch wok made by Chicago Oven. And this wok is perfect for this purpose. And besides, I have the wok, I better make use of it. This is definitely a good way to prevent my wife to put the wok onto the goodwill pile. I did not marinate the pork because I wanted to have its natural flavor as much as possible. After stir-frying them for about maybe 1 or 2 minutes, I add the shiitake mushroom to it. I love the sound of the cast iron wok, and this is one thing I really enjoy using the cast iron wok. In fact, the cast iron wok has to be one of my favorite wok because I like the construction, I like the shape, I like the size. The only thing is that they are way too heavy to haul around. And of course, they do not have insulated handle, so you cannot move them unless you have a hot pad. If I'm only going to cook one dish and also going to serve the dish in the wok, then I definitely will choose the cast iron wok. I love this idea, and this is what my friend Eugene will call it, a one-wok meal. After looking at what I have in the wok, I decided I have way more pork and shiitake mushroom than I need to make this soup. So I remove half of them, which I'm going to use later on to cook a different dish. I think otherwise I might end up more like a stew versus a soup. Stir-frying the pork and the shiitake mushroom is much preferred because you can seal in the flavor. If you add them directly to boiling water, it probably will not be as good. So next, I add water to the wok to make the soup. After bringing the water to boil, I let it boil for about a couple minutes. And then I turn down the heat to simmer the soup. And now I'm ready to season it. To season the soup, I'm going to start out with the Wok with Tak basic seasoning mix. This seasoning mix is great for making soup. In fact, I have used this to make all kinds of soup. It gives the soup great umami flavor. I have created this seasoning mix, and I have made it available on Amazon. If you are interested, you can give it a try. I have the link below the video. Next, I'm going to add some hot sesame oil. The sesame oil will give the soup a nice sesame flavor, which is always typical for this type of soup. But the hot oil that associate with the sesame oil will make the soup have a distinct type of hotness, which is very different from if you just add spicy, say, pepper flake, which I'm going to add. So next, I'm going to add some hot chili pepper flake. Again, the amount that you add is very much up to your personal preference. In this soup, because I'm cooking this for my son, and he likes things that are pretty spicy, and so I'm going to add quite a bit to it. Of course, there are other methods that you can bring up the temperature of the soup. You can use, for example, you can use chili powder, you can use paprika. There are many possible options, and you will find that you prefer some over the others. For example, you can also use hot chili sauce. But if you are starting to make the soup, and if you don't have all the other hot chili pepper or hot chili sauce are available, hot chili pepper flakes is probably the most reliable way to create the spiciness that you want. Now I'm ready to add the tofu. I add the tofu toward the end because the tofu only need to be warmed up. So by adding it toward the end, I would not risk of breaking them down. I like to keep them as intact as possible. I use half of that package. I kept the rest for another dish the next day. Well, the dish is almost done. In fact, I'm toward the tail end. The last thing I'm going to do is to adjust the sourness of the dish. And for create the sourness of the hot and sour soup, I would strongly recommend you to use a rice vinegar. Its rice vinegar is known as zhenjiang rice vinegar. It is the typical flavor that you will find in a hot and sour soup. And that doesn't mean that you cannot use other type of vinegars. For example, you can use apple cider vinegar, or you can just simply use distilled vinegar, or sometimes even use balsamic vinegar. They will all give you a slightly different flavor. Or you can simply use a little bit of each. And this is a good way to do the flavor chasing, to create the type of sourness that you prefer. And the final step is to thicken the soup. I'm going to use cornstarch by first creating a cornstarch water suspension. I'm going to use 1 part of cornstarch to 3 parts of water. I put them in a jar so I can shake it up before I add it to the soup. I'm going to add a little bit at a time and with constant stirring. I adjust the setting of the burner in such a way that the soup is under a low simmer. With constant stirring, I only add small amount of cornstarch at a time until it achieves the consistency that I want. Next, I'm ready to create an egg drop. I use 3 eggs. I beat up the egg and I add the egg slowly as I stir the egg. Different people have different preference in terms of the texture of the egg. Most people would like the eggs almost like a wispy clouds, but some people like it to be more firm. And in this case, you can turn up the heat higher and you can add the egg faster. So this way, the egg will take on a more firm texture. And if you prefer not to have the eggs in the soup, you can skip it completely. Or you can use more or less egg as you prefer. At this point, you can do a taste test and make further adjustments. Either if you want to make it harder, you can add more hot chili pepper flakes. But if you want it to be more sour, then you can add more vinegar. If you like to increase the saltiness of the soup, you can either add salt or you can add some soy sauce. And the last but not the least, I'm going to add some chopped scallions to garnish the soup. With a few quick stirs, the soup is ready to be served. In fact, I just take the whole wok and put it on top of the dining table and we just serve directly from it. I would like to thank Hank for making this request, and I hope this dish meets his approval. I'm going to include the recipe below the video. If you have any dish that you would like me to make, please let me know, and I'll be happy to see whether I can do it or not. Again, I post a video each day to help you to make home cooking as part of your daily routine. If you'd like to learn more about my fast cooking system, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. So keep on cooking. I will see you tomorrow.